And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Smoker Show. It's Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern here. January 12th, 2021. Already 12 days into the new year. We thought everything was going to go away. But no. But no, as my good friend, my co-host, Mr. Phil Busardo, will remind you, we're just getting started for 2021. What's up, Phil?
It's unbelievable what's going on. Am I in the shot? There. Oh, here we are. Listen, everybody. I just said this in the last video that I did. Okay. I feel like tensions are really, really high. I feel like there's a lot of anxiety out there. I feel like there's a lot of depression out there. But I'm going to look at this from a Smoker Show perspective and a Smoker Show point of view, right? If that happens and you feel like, you know what, I just got to have a cigarette. I just got to have a cigarette. Okay. Don't do it. Don't do it. Take a deep breath, right? Think about what you've accomplished as a vapor and don't go back to a smoker. If you have to, here's what you do. Go out, find the highest milligram nicotine you can get. Okay. Maybe a tobacco flavor, load it up in a cheap tank and vape. That'll be your cigarette. Okay?
That's great advice.
Get you through.
That's great advice, because you know how many times we've heard over the years, oh, my father died, my girlfriend broke up with me, some stressful situation puts people into going back to cigarettes. Happens a lot. It happens probably more than people want to admit. I mean, even a lot of good friends of mine on Facebook that I've known for years that have been vapors, this year, due to circumstance or whatever, went back to cigarettes. And they all tell me the same thing. Oh, my mother died, or they came into a very, very stressful situation. But not knowing that you can easily go out there and get 12, 18, 24 milligram and try to replicate. I mean, I know you might be used to, vaping 3 milligram, and that's fine to maintain you when things are good. But when things get stressful, you do need some extra nicotine. There's nothing wrong with going out there and getting that.
No, absolutely. When I quit, this is way before vaping, years before vaping was even a thing. When I quit for a year, like not a single cigarette, nothing, no vaping, no cigarette. There was no vaping. Nana passed away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I went back to that. I went back to smoking like I never even gave it up. Like I never, because it's like your companion. It's like your crutch, your friend that has been with you through good times and through bad. But you know what? Now, that's my friend.
Yeah. Well, I'm your friend, first of all. I'm that.
Well, yeah, no. Yeah. Well, second, I can't vape you.
Oh, you guess you can. All right, enough of the jokes. We have some serious stuff to get out first, and then we're gonna have some fun as well too later on. Our guest tonight is going to be Gregory Conley from the American Vaping Association, president of the American Vaping Association. The telephone lines are open. If you have any questions for Gregory, you're more than welcome to call in. 215-383-5752. Press 1 when you hear the British lady speaking. That way I can see you on the switchboard. And of course, our good friend, Mr. Bill Tarling, the warrior, the soldier, Bill Tarling, will be collecting questions from Facebook and from YouTube and from Periscope and relaying them to me, and I will get to them at some point. But this guy, look at this guy. How long have I known you, Greg? I mean, it's got to be 8 years now that I've known you, right?
I just passed 10 years doing this work, except 3 or 4 of them as a volunteer. So it may be maybe even longer.
Maybe even longer. Yeah. Well, welcome to the show. We've been trying to make this thing happen, but I think it was actually really good that we just kind of timed it after the events of the last 30 days.
Post insurrection, pre-inauguration.
You can't make it up, really. Like if somebody would told me that this would be happening like right now, and I'd would never believe it. Oh, I got a little tunnel echo on you. Let me just fix this real quick. I forgot to take this monitor out.
You know, I never believed it either. As a matter of fact, Dimitri and I just did an article for a French magazine. And one of the questions was, when are you moving out of the country?
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. Like Dimitri, he's got an exit. You got an escape plan, right? You're going to Greece. You got property. I'm stuck. I'm stuck.
Yes. So I was planning for my long term to, 6 months here, 6 months there. That's ideally my plan to go. But it might happen sooner. I don't know. But let me make sure that the tunnel echo has gone. Let me switch from that to this. And then let me switch from this to this. And I think, all right, we should be good now. So Gregory, first of all, how's the American Vaping Association holding up? I know there's a lot of stuff going on with the various groups that have represented our industry over the last decade. Not so good for some. A lot of groups have come and gone. But how's the American Vaping Association holding up in this difficult, obviously pandemic that we're having, but also the financial crisis of the industry itself?
All things considered, we're okay. We were fortunate enough to have received a very generous donation from someone within the industry pre-pandemic, about 2 months beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And once the pandemic hit, I was largely locked up in my house for the first time in a decade, not crisscrossing the country, which is where the bulk of our expenses, other than paying me, go to. So we've been working remotely, worked on a bunch of different projects throughout the year, and we are gearing up for 2021, which not just the federal level with the changeover to the Biden administration and what that means for FDA, what that means with the Republicans losing control of the Senate, what that means for legislation. But then, of course, you have these state and local governments that are only getting worse as they have more examples to point to when it comes to flavors and total product bans.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that, especially it's one of the questions that we were asked during the interview that we did for the French magazine today, and I really want to expand it with you and the importances. But financially, I think one of the biggest problems that we're going to run into this year is representation. And I can tell you, the Tennessee Smoke-Free Association has been around since 2014. It was the first independent group to launch in America, and I've never had a problem financially. I've always been funded every year, always operating in the black, and always a year ahead. And this year was tough for me to get commitments to be able to sign for the lobbyist and the PR firm and keep my PAC going and all that. It was just really, really tough. And I can see that if that happens in Tennessee, where is one of the most vape-friendly states, I can see how difficult it's going to be in other states and on the federal level to be able to get these companies to be able to fund the movement going forward.
And we've been able to be generous in the past to throw out $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 at different state groups, trying to put out messages saying, oh, for the next 24, 48 hours, we'll match those donations to try to help these state level groups. We're going to be able to do that just on a more limited trajectory unless something changes in the near term. I am worried, especially when you look at, there are states where it's a long shot, but proper work could be done, like a Rhode Island, or Massachusetts is even having conversations that may not amount to much, but conversations about changing the flavor ban. New York as well. Well, there are still issues in those states relating to vaping. There's more that they can ban. There's more that they can try to do. But how in the heck do you pay for a lobbyist in a state where nearly every vape shop, if not every single one, has gone down the tubes?
Yeah.
And there are other states, everybody in that Northeast path, all the way down to DC. DC is just about to ban all flavored vaping products.
Connecticut just announced the other day.
Connecticut has had the same kind of bills every single year. It's still a very good shot that this could be the year. The 𝗪𝗏𝗏 chapter up there has an excellent lobbyist, one that I found years ago, and they've been able to keep paying, but this year is going to be a struggle. So I'm going to be looking at that. But Connecticut and New Hampshire are our New England firewall. And Connecticut's going to be easier to pass than New Hampshire. But nonetheless, you also have Delaware, I'm sure there'll be an attempt. Maryland, there's a renewed attempt. We just had bills introduced in different states for banning e-liquids and banning open tank systems. So there's even more that they can do beyond flavors, beyond taxation, beyond online sales, which is a whole other matter.
Yeah, and I saw Kentucky was trying to pass a bill that gives municipalities the authority to do whatever they want with tobacco, which is, you know, that's really, really bad, you know.
And Kentucky is a weird state. I don't know exactly how that bill, by the way, the state senator that introduced that bill, she is the woman who is seated next to me during the Trump meeting, Senator Julie Adams from Kentucky. And Kentucky's weird in that they've been able, multiple cities passed smoke-free air laws because in Kentucky, at least smoke-free air, I don't know what the product restrictions, that would go to, but smoke-free air has been allowed to be controlled by local boards of health in like Kentucky, West Virginia, one or two other states, and those states, Massachusetts, those states have been, those localities have been very eager to put bad restrictions on vaping products. So if that bill in Kentucky passes, which hopefully being that it is Kentucky, it's got good defense, both from tobacco and from the vaping lobby, that bill will not be able to become law because we know where that will lead.
Greg, I mean, there's no doubt that this is a methodical strategy that our opponents, you know, the American Cancer Society, Heart Association, Tobacco-Free Kids, started using a couple years ago. When they try to go off, you know, after us on a federal level and failed, then they switched this strategy and they're well, we're going to take city by city, like they did in California, and then state by state, and then eventually, hopefully, be able to do it on a federal level. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, pretty much. There's a lot of focus on the federal level, and of course, there is a lot bad that has happened at the federal level and is coming down the pike. But their strategy, the strategy that they are dealing with day to day, is how do we get state and local governments? They have it's not just the usual suspects. We also have 𝗶𝗵𝗶𝗹. 𝗶𝗵𝗶 is out there going to every single mother on every single large city council in America, trying to pitch their story and have them become a 𝗶𝗵𝗏 mom. Still waiting for them to put out their full 990, so we know exactly how much Bloomberg money they suddenly have to work with. But that is, the local and state governments are absolutely going to be a killer for even more stores coming up.
And the reason I'm bringing this up, because I mean, obviously this is the Smoker Show, so our audience is a little bit different than, you know, like a regular vape show. We get a little bit more new people here that watch the show, or people that want to kind of understand how we got here. They're not all like, you know, been in the trenches like we have for the last decade. But why do you think would a nonprofit organization, for example, the American Lung Association, that really cares about people, that wants to get people to stop smoking so they can not die of cancer, why would somebody like that, or American Heart, American Cancer, why would they be against a product that has been scientifically proven to be at least 95% less harmful than traditional cigarettes?
It's a toxic combination of ideology and pride. Dr. Michael Siegel probably used different words when he used this speech, but you have the ideology where it looks like smoking, it must be bad. This is a product that did not come from the drug realm. It came as a consumer product. So it's different than anything they've dealt with in the past. And with pride, you now have a 10-year, 11-year track record of the executives at the American Lung, Cancer, Heart, Matt Myers, et cetera, saying that vaping products are the biggest evil to come since cigarettes, if not worse. And for them to actually backtrack, for them to say, oh, maybe we were actually wrong, that takes a person who is confident in their advocacy abilities and in their own intellectual capacities, which that's not something that's a strong point for many of these groups. They don't like to admit they're wrong. They don't like to actually deal with people other than their own circle. And if you want to be extremely cynical, the bottom line is all nonprofits like money. They like being able to staff up. They like being able to give bonuses. And right now, Matt Myers is benefiting from about $55 million per year to ban flavored vaping products. And there's still another 2 years, I believe, of that money left.
It's a lot of money to go up against. But one of the things that I find really hard to overcome is some of the statements that these groups have made have been really bold lies. I mean, no scientific evidence to it. And I don't understand how they could even possibly begin to backtrack on that. I mean, I see it daily on Twitter when we're talking about cancer and 𝗵𝗶𝗶 and tobacco-free kids saying stuff like it's poison. Like, I mean, it's some really, really non-scientific stuff. It makes absolutely no sense. And I just can't see at some point they're like, oh, okay, well, you know, we made a mistake. So yeah, vaping is a little bit less harmful than cigarettes. So maybe you should try it if you've tried everything else. I don't even see that happening, not in the near future.
The only way that it will happen is if you end up with a extremely constrained market where there have been MRTPs, where there's been a couple of years of dramatically reduced youth usage, where there probably is no or very limited flavors and there are great restrictions on who can buy and when, then you might be able to have them say, oh, finally, the regulated market. What we were scared of was not just these products. We were talking about people didn't know what they were buying. We couldn't tell people, oh, if it's your last resort, go try vaping, because we just didn't know if the products that people were getting in their hands were going to hurt them. They're able to fall back on that right now. Eventually that may fall out. But then again, we're now 2 years, a year and a half into Swedish Match having their MRTP for Swedish snus. And what has changed in tobacco control with regard to their policy and beliefs towards that product?
Nothing. And the use is not as prevalent. I mean, you know, you have obviously the clique of snus users that, you know, but it's not, I mean, it's not mainstream. It should be. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be. It should be, but it's not.
No, and it doesn't matter to them. The fact is, 10 years ago, they were warning that if we allowed these new spitless, smokeless products to come into America, that it was going to fuel youth usage, and teen hockey players were going to be putting them between their toes, and every little thing that they've used with regards to vaping products, many of them were recycled from their battle against new age products like dissolvables or snus. So with vaping products, it gives them the perfect scary product that they can use to attach bans on all the other products they want to target, but that legislators don't particularly care about. So right now, what's becoming clearer over time is while we're a significant category of revenue for some of these companies, some of them are increasingly viewing this category as a nuisance because it is inviting all of this attention. Not that they would stop if vaping magically went away, but we are bringing a lot of attention to the entire category.
Hey, Greg, if and when something gets through a PMTA, open vapor, closed vapor, how much does that help? Does that really help us? Can we piggyback off of that?
Well, here's the thing. The only people who are going to be able to piggyback are those that have PMTAs. There's absolutely, if tomorrow the FDA approved Vuse Solo and they approved tobacco and menthol and coffee, they could, Reynolds as lobbyists would go into state legislatures like New York, like Rhode Island, like Massachusetts and say, look at what FDA did. Look at what we've agreed to do with our sales restrictions. Can we have language that says, and actually this is already in the New York flavor ban, by the way, can we have language that says if a product has a PMTA or an MRTP, that it can come back to the market? But still remains to be seen. There's a lot of unanswered questions. I'll be talking next week, I thought it was tonight, with Regulator Watch. And we're going to go through, there's a couple possibilities at FDA where you would significantly decrease our chances of small or medium-sized businesses getting any pathway out of this.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too. And I think that we're before we get into the PMTA and before we get into specifics, let me bring this question up that was asked in the chat.
Sure.
A lot of people are going to be working the legislation, the legislature this year, whether it's going to be via email or Zoom or whatever pathway they give us to try to fight this legislation. But the question from Rushmore Extension 23 says, how should we approach this issue of ideology when we're talking about American Lung Association, American Heart Association, and so forth? What would be the strategy to approach this issue of trying to change that ideology?
Part of it depends on what you know about your state legislator. If your state legislator is a drug reformer, someone that does not believe marijuana should remain illegal and should be sold in age-restricted retail stores, you take a different tact with them than you do the old stodgy Republican or business-friendly Democrat who doesn't care about arguments about public health. They care about keeping their state functioning. So it all depends. But bringing up how these groups have opposed these products for years, that they have taken money from sources that have clear goals of prohibition, showing them some of the science, not the actual scientific articles, but maybe some of the better summaries written by professional, competent people on the subject. Those are the kinds of things that can make an impact with legislators. It just depends on the bill. It depends on the person. It's good to actually go look up news stories about your state legislators and see where they're at on different issues.
Yeah, one of the things that we found out last year when we were talking to a legislator is that his wife is on the board of the American Cancer Society of Tennessee. And, you know, he's not going to ruin his marriage over you vaping, that's for sure. So we just left him alone. We just moved on to the next one. We're just trying to get 7 votes. You know, at some point you have to just give up. But it's good to get background information on everybody that you're going to go and talk to. That way you can shift your strategy. Kind of a silly question, but... were you surprised with the elections and how it turned out? I mean, I'm not going to debate, you know, the tinfoil hats and all that. I'm just serious question. Were you surprised by the presidency and the Senate shifting?
I was not surprised. There was about a half hour there where the returns were coming in from Southern Florida and then from Southern Texas, where it felt like there could be that quote unquote comeback a little late in the night, but then that quickly fell apart, and it seemed like the pollsters were correct. And then initially, I think the general attitude was these are the Georgia Senate races were races where for Republicans it was their race to lose. They had to actually do something to screw it up. And unfortunately, 2 months of insanity, to put it in at least that culminated last week, that almost certainly turned off voters in Georgia. So now we're left with a 50-50 Senate tie.
Yeah, and I have to agree. Plus the Georgia, I mean, the Democratic Party here in Georgia did, because my house is in Georgia, even though I'm in Chattanooga. I'm like right on the border. But I will tell you, the Democratic Party did just a fantastic job of knocking doors. And, you know, I know you've knocked some doors in the past, but I mean, they did a great grassroots effort to get people out to vote. It's plain and simple.
Republicans are much more individualistic and much less likely to want to join a team and go out and knock on doors for 6 hours. That's something that the actual national and state GOP needs to address in this new digital world where people are able to get educated. And if you don't counter that information, well, you get results like we've been getting.
Yeah. And on that note, let's look back in the last 4 years of the Trump administration. Now, I remember Godshaw on ECF saying, we need to get rid of Obama. We need to vote for Trump. I remember a lot of people in this industry. I'm just naming him because he's on record on ECF. I'm not going to go by hearsay, but a lot of people in this industry pushed to have this to shift, you know, into a Republican presidency, and with the goal that, you know, Trump would say vaping. So my,
reality.
huh?
Sorry.
So I mean, my question, I'm not going to ask you if Trump saved vaping or not, but my question is, looking back at these last 4 years, did things get better for us? Was it more of a delay of what the inevitable is going to be? What were these last 4 years for tobacco harm reduction?
So let's keep in mind that if President Trump had not won, you had President Hillary Clinton coming in with a deadline at the FDA 18, 20 months away that would, unless there were court challenges that actually resulted in injunctions, that 2018 PMTA date likely would have stayed. So yes, it delayed the inevitable, but as we discussed before we went on the air, what happened last year with President Trump being fed bad information by Kellyanne Conway and Secretary Azar, and his, oh, this feels good to me, so this is what I'm going to do today, going out on national television and saying vaping is killing people,
yeah,
and targeting our young people, that forced the industry at that point. It was a do or die moment. It was, if we do not succeed in convincing this this man who is very concerned about his own electoral fates and listened intently to Twitter and people, anyone who, the last person that he talked to would often be the decision that he would make, you had to go out there and say, which I believe was an honest thing to say, that this would hurt his reelection chances. But in doing so, and in preventing the full federal flavor ban from coming in, where no flavors would be available until PMTAs, and you know that once the products get taken away, good luck getting an approval on them. You had to go in with that argument, with that these people, many vapors are lean Republicans. You need to listen to their voices. But the side effect is people, some legislators, some newspaper columnists, journalists, because of that, they now associate the vaping issue with a political party.
Yeah.
So ultimately, a double-edged sword, to say the least. Public perception, that was going to get worse with or without Trump in office. All the things that have happened, all the various fake news stories over the years and misinterpreted stories. But if we had had President Clinton, I don't think we'd still be here talking about what's going to happen with our PMTAs. I think that issue would have been settled by now, and it wouldn't have been settled in a way we're happy with.
I think I completely agree with you. By the way, I just want to make sure everybody understands that we're not going to start a Democrat-Republican war in the chat. You will be timed out by the moderators. This is not the place for this. This conversation is educational and it's not political, okay? And the telephone lines are open if you want something to say.
When you all went to the Capitol, I know one of the people in the chat room was the guy with the horns.
Yeah, probably was. They gave him internet access from jail. 215-383-5752. If you have any questions or comments for Greg, please call in. But yeah, let's continue on that, because I agree with you that we definitely bought some time, and it brought us into the situation where the big meeting happened. And so I want, for the people that don't know, that you did get the opportunity to have a seat at the table with President Trump alongside other industry leaders, along other industry groups and anti-vaping groups, right? All got to sit down at a table. What led into that meeting? And talk a little bit about your experience at that meeting and what maybe was the fruits of that meeting afterwards.
Sure. That was the craziest day of my life. As I mentioned earlier, you had the President Trump announcement on 9/11 of last year. And then by that Friday, he had sent out a tweet as I was in the town car being driven to do CNN with Chris Cuomo from a satellite studio. He sent out the tweet saying, with all caps at various points, saying, we don't want to ban the vaping, but we want the vaping to be safe for all and kept away from the kids. So that created this process over the next couple months where we went out and held events before and during Trump campaign rallies. We got national news attention on the issue, CNN, Fox News. Washington Post, all these different places. And then we started to hear rumblings in early November that there was going to be a White House vaping meeting. And my worry at the time was, even though people like myself and Paul Blair and 𝗂𝗂, that we'd been the leading voice on the issue along with VTA, that just because of how Washington works, that the logistics of the meeting would be tobacco-free kids, American lung, American heart, and then R.J. Reynolds and 𝗷𝗟 and 𝗀𝗎.
Yeah.
And we worked whatever back channel sources we could to get word to people, hey, you know, that's not the voice you want to listen to. The voice, the argument is the small business. And then I got a phone call inviting me to the meeting. I'd already gotten word. One of the journalists I know had called me saying, yeah, meetings, invites went out for the meeting, because one of the body parts groups called her, of course. And I thought, it's not coming. Then the phone call came. And I think that morning I did Fox Business and a radio show, and then some camera from some outlet, I don't think I've ever seen the video, was following me around for an hour and talking to me for some news channel. And then you enter the White House, you go through the security. CNBC grabbed me for an interview right in front of the White House before I went in there. And you're overwhelmed when you're first.
It's gotta be surreal. It's gotta be surreal.
Yes, I just remember going in, and they brought us to a room to just sit down before we were brought into the large meeting room. And I always like to be nice to the aunties. I can be quite cutting. I can be quite critical in my speeches. But when I see them, I like to say hello and just exchange general pleasantries. And I remember talking to the woman from 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗹, and I said to her, did you ever think that you'd be doing a meeting at the White House? And she just looked at me right in the eyes and goes, yes. So that was our bonding moment at that moment.
Wow.
But yeah, then when President Trump walks into the room and everybody stands up, and then he looks out to his staff and says, oh, you can bring the fake news in. And then all of a sudden, while you're doing your introduction, you have 40 cameras and journalists staring at you. But I just went in there knowing I had a job to do, which was to speak up when needed and not shut up unless it was becoming counterproductive. And I think Tony and I complimented each other well during the meeting.
Yeah, I mean, the way that you approached it, I think, speaking on behalf of the industry, again, not trying to blow vape up your ass, but I think that representing the industry, you've always done a great job. Number one, because you're a vapor, you're very passionate about it. Number two, you're very well educated on it. But it's key words that grab the attention of Trump. You know, it's just like, you can't go on like a 10, 15 minute, oh, look, you know, it's just, you need to throw in, you know, those 2-3 keywords. And I think that you did. I think that you accomplished that. And I think, you know, we're very proud to have you there.
Well, I'm glad to hear. And I just remember after the meeting, I had to rush to get back to my car because my partner's sister was getting married. And I had promised that I would be at the wedding. And thankfully, she and her family understood that a meeting with President Trump was a pretty good excuse for being hours late to the wedding. Thankfully, I think she worried that they thought she was insane, because all of a sudden I was always missing events. Like maybe I didn't exist because I was always on the road. But fortunately, I think at the wedding, one of the TVs had CNN on it. So they saw my face and they know that I was real. But Tony and I just stood outside, and Tony said to me, he's like, just wait 1 minute before you go back into the craziness. Just like take in this moment. And it was at that point when Tony and I took a selfie that I realized I had done Fox Business that morning. I still had all the makeup on my face from prior.
They're gonna think all that big vape money that.
Hey, not only did you represent us well, but you got a good zinger in there at the end as well.
Oh, I don't even remember. It's all a cloud. And
I think it was the funding.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Never hurts to get a parting shot in.
No, it really does. But following that meeting, I think if one thing that we accomplished is that they backed off a little bit. I mean, you know, their stance changed from what it was before. Plus, the We Vape, We Vote movement was picking up some steam at the time. Do you think that the We Vape, We Vote movement influenced the election?
Once COVID hit, I think much of this became irrelevant because you saw AVA, CASA, other groups didn't even really try. Like there were some entreaties to the Trump campaign saying, well, if you say something on it, then you'll get some attention. And I think it would be a net positive. But ultimately, once COVID came and you're in the middle of a pandemic and you have all these emotional arguments going on every day with one side saying what they're saying and the other side saying the other, I don't even want to wade into the debate over lockdowns and COVID testing. But at that point, plus Trump had split his losses or cut his losses, whatever the term is. And so you had, anytime you would say, oh, well, Trump left flavored vaping products on the market for some, they could shoot back, yeah, but he banned the most popular ones or the fastest growing ones. He caved to the pressure. So it was just a mess overall. And once COVID came in, it was clear that this was going to be very, very difficult to get in the news and bring people's attention to it.
865, I see you on the line. Give me just a second. Let me get this question in. I'm going to bring you on. I just want to follow up on that really quickly. I got a sneak peek at some data. It said that in the last 4 years, over 4,500 vape shops have shut down in America. And I saw another statistic. I don't know how accurate this is, but over 83% of the existing vape shops that are left have diversified, meaning they've moved into CBD, Delta 8, bongs, pipes, pre-rolls, dildos, whatever. Anything that you can think of across the room. I mean, you have to think, though, that these 4,500 vape shops, if let's say 2 owners or 1 owner, 3 employees each, I mean, it's a lot of people to be disgruntled. You know, I mean, it's a lot of people that have been affected by the laws in the last 4 years, no matter how they started their business, because to me, it's the American dream, right? These guys quit smoking and they're like, oh, I'm going to start a business to help other people quit smoking. And then all of a sudden they lose it all. I mean, it's a lot of people, Greg.
Certainly, if Trump won Michigan, if he won Georgia by 600 votes, I think there would be a lot of people out saying, you know what, maybe you shouldn't have targeted the vapors to Michigan Governor Whitmer, but he didn't. And so unfortunately, you don't get to make those arguments when you lose.
Yeah. I hear you. All right, let me bring this telephone call. Has been waiting patiently. 865, you're on the air with Greg and Phil. What's up?
Yep.
Hey.
Hello. Can you turn down your stream if you don't mind? 865.
I put him to sleep. It's not.
All right, maybe they can't hear me. Let me make sure I got all this thing correctly here. All right, go ahead, Phil. Just a second.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Greg, a lot of the people, the regulators that are crushing us, would you say they're even educated to the point that they know EVALI is not caused by nicotine vaping?
That's gotten around to the point where if you spend more than a few hours looking into the subject, inevitably you see enough articles that mention it, that also say they found it linked to illicit THC products. But those are the same people that also are more than willing in their supposedly science-based thinking to latch on to the tiny percentage of people who likely lied and said they didn't vape THC. So that they can say, oh, we just don't know, and that's what we need to be worried about.
Yeah, that's something that's always confused me, where the argument is we don't know what's in there. I mean, it's been around since 2006. How do you not know what's in there at this point?
It's a good question. There's always ways to come back and loop that argument into a never-ending series of rebuttals where dishonest people who are educated can, just like Professor Glantz made a career of, can really muddle up and confuse and cloud the issue to the point where just today I have to write a letter or ask somebody to write a letter asking for a retraction, Scientific America, which is supposed to be a magazine that actually has some editorial standards, put out an article saying that vaping is not only linked to the EVALI, but that it's also linked to popcorn lung and to pneumonia, neither of which is actually true.
Stomach issues now too. From
guts, your gut.
Yeah, your gut. Yeah.
These poor mice with it. 865. Can you hear us now?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. This is David Emanuel in Knoxville, Tennessee. How are you?
Great, David. How you doing, my friend?
Very good. Hello to Gregory and yourself and Phil.
Thank you.
My question is in related. Yes, my question is in relation to COVID-19. Really appreciate Phil on Twitter, running down all of the data on this. What effect, if any, is the information regarding vaping or nicotine intake with COVID going to, impact the industry and possibly our view of things in relation to the positives of nicotine intake and the virus?
Great question, David. Greg?
So the bad news is that thanks to 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗹 and her friends putting together an amateurish study that got worldwide press attention, supposedly linking COVID-19 to vaping, when actually current exclusive vaping was not associated with a positive COVID-19 diagnosis. That got out there and that generated more press attention than all of the papers that have consistently found that among smokers, current smokers, particularly heavy smokers, that they are actually at much less risk of being hospitalized due to COVID-19. That this is a tactic that's going to be used this year quite a bit, where they're going to say, in the midst of a lung pandemic, why would we continue to allow our children to use a product that has been shown to worsen COVID-19 or linked to increased infections? That's all a lie, but unfortunately it sounds persuasive. It sounds, if you're somebody who is suspicious of vaping products, well, you inhale it. This is a lung condition. Naturally, one must worsen the other. People aren't used to and often resist counterintuitive findings like those on smoking. So the bad news is, even though the reality is that there's no link between vaping and COVID, that's going to get heard by legislators much more than what the real, that is linked to COVID, much more than what the science is actually showing.
And thanks for anything else you got, David?
It's always follow the money, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what it boils down to.
It's amazing that the money, unfortunately we don't have as much as all the anti-vapors and anti-nic folks. But I guess one other question, I've been following the 𝗶𝗂𝗧𝗏 case where they smeared him and he's come back. What do you think is going to be the outcome of that, if any?
Every country has different libel laws. I am very much a First Amendment absolutist, where I generally don't think that inferences and some of the connections that they tried to talk about with 𝗶𝗏𝗧𝗏 without directly saying what they were trying to say, I have some doubts about whether or not a case would actually work. But what they did to him is just an example of what they've tried to do to Brad Rideau for years. They've tried to do to anybody, Derek Yock, others who come in. But of course, with 𝗶𝗏𝗧𝗏, it's much worse, since he hasn't solicited and received direct funding from the industry for God knows how long. Ďmitri's better informed on the exact background of his supposed conflicts.
Absolutely.
This is the Bloomberg crew.
Exactly.
They have tons and tons of money. They have staff. And God, they've been in the middle of a pandemic for 10 months where they can't travel to conferences. They can't do all these things that they're used to pretend that they're being effective. And one of the projects that they've taken on is, Who are the scientists that challenge us, that challenge our friends? Let's try to take them down. And even if we can't get them fired from their positions or rejected from journals, well, the next journalist that Google's Farsalinos or Google's Derek Yock or whoever, well, let's hope they see a Vox article, a Stat News article, or this article laying out all the reasons why Dr. Farsalinos is a bad person. That's the strategy.
Thank you, David. Have a wonderful night there in Knoxville. Thanks for calling in. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Hang in there, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
215-383-5752 if you have any questions for Gregory. I want to break down a little bit moving forward. You know, we have heard this, you know, this argument between Democrats and Republicans, and it's a big flaming topic amongst vapors all the time. It's like Democrats hate vaping, Republicans love vaping. You know, we've heard this, but the advice, and I want you to expand on this advice, is no matter who is holding power, we have to treat it the same, right? One thing that I learned early in my political career, thanks to people like you and other people, smart people that I associated myself while learning lobbying and talking to legislators, is it doesn't make a difference what's after their name. You know, you have to approach it with science, you have to approach it with common sense and with politeness. You know, you just can't walk in to say, oh, you're a Democrat, you hate vaping, you know? So I want you to give a little bit more advice on, we got the next 4 years, we have Biden, and we have a Democratic House and Senate. That does not change our approach. It shouldn't be based on our political affiliation, but it should be based on the concept of tobacco harm reduction, because that's what it's about.
Yeah, and we need more education. It's difficult in the pandemic, but business owners, local advocacy groups can work with 𝗂𝗍, trying to do Zoom meetings with not the congressman himself, but his legislative director, and actually following up when there are, if you meet with someone from a congressional office, well, at least once a month, in the midst of all of the terrible news coverage that this industry gets that's inaccurate, there's an article in a reputable publication that could be sent to people who are interested in learning about the subject or willing to take 2 seconds to at least look beyond a headline. That's the kind of activity that if we had somebody in 3/4 of the in each of the congressional districts doing that work regularly, it would make a difference over time. It's just difficult right now with the pandemic to really establish those relationships, but it can be done. Absolutely.
Just don't make it political. Go ahead, Phil.
Dimitri, when you say, like, you know, whether it be Democrats or Republicans, you know, we stay the course and we do the same thing. But isn't that a little, does we vape, we vote even work anymore? I mean, that strategy is pretty much off the table at this point.
No, but you're still constituent of an elected official, right? You're a voter, you're a constituent, you have a small business in their district, and that's the way that you need to approach it. It doesn't make any difference who that person that won that seat is, what I'm saying. Whether your guy was Trump does not necessarily mean for you to change the way that you approach a meeting with a politician. So even though the we vape, we vote, there's elections coming in 2 years. There's elections every 2 years, you know? I mean, it can be a thing, but I think the thing that I'm trying to say is that don't let, because your guy lost, change the way that you're trying to approach these meetings, is what I'm saying. Don't make it a political thing. Make it always about harm reduction, and make it about the science. Make it about small business. Make it about jobs. Make it everything that we've always made it all these years.
Yeah, and we vape, we vote for a national campaign. Very good slogan. And in a national race, every vote counts in particular states. But when you start going to your state legislature, to your state house guy that represents 12,000 people, and you throw out we vape, we vote, and the reality is that there's a total of 70 people in that district that actually vape every day and care about it. Well, chances are those 70 votes, there's not going to be a race where it comes down to 70 votes. They happen. A lot of politicians worry about that. So, but they don't need to be directly told that I vape, I vote. If you're sending a letter to your legislator, I think they understand that, God willing, you do vote.
All right. Before I shift back to politics, just a quick question on the FDA. The FDA has done absolutely nothing. I mean, we're sitting over here waiting. We had you know, we had just this monster effort from small manufacturers to try to comply as much as they possibly could, right? With the deadline of the PMTA. Also, you had larger companies that submitted really nice, very, very few, but submitted very, very nice PMTAs. We haven't seen any enforcement. We haven't seen a list, right? We haven't seen nothing from like. There's no communication on what the PMTA process is. What do you know?
So I have some limited sympathy for FDA, and limited being a key word, just because of all the procedures and all of the steps that they have to go through to issue a regulation, to make a decision on an application, to send a deficiency letter. And they've also, I think, been waiting once they started to get an inkling, oh my God, we're not going to receive 125 PMTAs, we're going to receive 1 million, 2 million of them, that they realized this is going to be a decision, what to do with these applications, ultimately, that they were going to wait for the next presidential term, whether it was Trump or whether it was Biden. I think they were going to do some of the prep work, but ultimately wait to see what happens with FDA, or rather with the presidency. So FDA, yes, we're now at 18 months, 17 months since JTI put in their applications for their tobacco and menthol products. We're probably at 15 months since Reynolds put in their first set of PMTAs. And I think some of those companies have probably gotten communications from the FDA about some of the fixes or clarifications, but no, they've done nothing. And you still have MRTPs. I spoke God knows how long about the Copenhagen MRTP from Altria, the weirdest MRTP that just asks for a smokeless product to say that the product reduces your risk of lung cancer, the most no-duh
statement. Yeah.
But FDA has a difficult job, and every moment of delay, I can't complain about that when you're facing what we are, because the reality is, and I hate to be a downer, but that's often my job, is that from what FDA has said, when the time comes, when they start sending out those letters to manufacturers, all of you who put in hours and hours of work figuring out the process, paying for the programs, et cetera, FDA can, with one fell swoop, send out 1,000 letters, 500 letters, however many, to all those manufacturers saying, you have 60 days to supplement your application with X, Y, and Z, or else we're going to proceed to deny the application.
And then you have to apply again.
And you're no longer getting the benefit of the enforcement discretion.
Yeah, you can't stay on the market at that point.
Yes.
You have to pull your product.
And then once you have, and this is creating situations in states now, where you have an FDA that is not acting on illegal products, well, states and local governments feel the need to step in. So that's where it becomes messy, where non-enforcement can be great if you're in a state where there's not 51% of votes to put crazy policy into place. But if you don't, well, a lack of enforcement can send a signal, well, we need to enforce at the state level.
Absolutely. On part of the article that we wrote today with Phil, my response was, what's the immediate threat? And Phil had some really good points on that. My response was very, very simple. Our immediate threat is state-by-state legislation, which is the greatest threat to harm reduction. With the FDA dragging its feet on approving vapor products with market authorization, our opponents have taken to individual states, creating unjust and unfair laws, banning flavored products, introducing taxes and other burdensome regulations, handing over everything to big tobacco. And in essence, that's what the next couple of years I see it being.
Yeah, I wish I had better news, but the reality...
the reality needs to be out there. People need to know what's going on. There is no better news on that.
Yeah, I wish I could stand up here and have the confidence and the lack of shame to say, we're going to fight this, and if we just raise $1 million, then by God, we're going to march on the Capitol, but we're not going to go past the Capitol police officers, and we're going to get changes done by Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Dimitri, I'm actually glad that we answered that question in two different ways, right? From two different perspectives. So I think you're absolutely right with the state-by-state regulations, right? But I said one of the biggest things that vaping is facing right now is mainstream media. Because even if all of the regulations went away, all of the flavor bans were lifted, we had no issues with vaping anymore, if mainstream media puts this stigma on vaping that it's no good, right? We're not going to have customers. We're not going to have an industry.
Yeah, once upon a time, I was just reading a book, and I forget what book it was, but they were talking about the media professionals in the 1980s, the 1970s, where information was controlled by the three major news networks, the actual over the top ABC, CBS, etc., the Washington Post, the New York Times, a couple others, and you pretty much had your boxes checked. Every other news source, the local news, they got their national news through the AP. So you targeted the AP. Well, now you have an environment where even with $1 billion, like if PMI decided to create a foundation for a smoke-free world, a truly smoke-free world, and be in charge of it, even with $1 billion, there are so many news sources, so many people to influence, that it's a very, very tall order to get that level of influence. So, and you have a media where bad news is good news.
Yeah, it's clicks.
Dog bites man isn't a story. Man bites dog, a hell of a story.
Yeah.
So with vaping, they know that the negative stories are what drives hits from people. And none of that is brand new.
Absolutely. And we have zero positive period. 240, I see you on the line there. Just give me 1 second. I want to add something here really, really quick. This is a very interesting question. And man, it's going to put me on a rant. This comes from 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗹. If S'more can IPO in Hong Kong at US $918 million with annual profits of US $308 million, where are the vaping industry lobbyists? They seem to be invisible. Is Greg all there is? So I think he's insinuating where's the money coming in from some of these Chinese companies that that have sales of $380 million in the US.
Well, thank you for recognizing I am out there still. But second, that's one of my priorities, is to re-engage with the Chinese, because some of the people that I was engaging with 3-4 years ago when I went over to Shenzhen, they may not be in business, or they may have been burned by participation with somebody else. You never know when you talk to these people who they have dealt with in the past. So I gave a little speech that they recorded for the Chinese e-cig convention that happened a month or two ago, and I'm connected with some of the Chinese vendors. So I want to actually have some more formal discussions with these people about the consequences and the revenue consequences to them of bad regulation. And even if these big companies go through the PMTA process, could you end up with multiple states where even a product with a PMTA, just the fact that it's an open system, suddenly gets it banned?
I think the problem is, 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗹, the Chinese have given money multiple times. The problem is, number one, we've gotten zero results. Okay? That's number one. And number two, the Chinese culture in general needs people. And I warned VTA about, don't forget, about 9-10 months ago, VTA was blasting all over Facebook. Hey, I went into Smok and I got $500,000. Hey, I went into Inic and I got $250,000. Hey, I went into Kanger and I got money. Go look, it's still there on Facebook, right? What the fuck happened to all that money? Over $2 million. What happened to that money? We had zero results. And if the Chinese don't see, the Chinese are, I'm going to put money in, but I need to see results, and you need to keep me up to date in a way that I can understand. When me and Phil did it with 𝗍𝗪 USA, it was the same way. We got boycotted by our own groups here. Me and Phil did. By our own groups trying to backdoor us to go get money. But when we were 𝗍𝗪 USA, we gave Greg money. Right? Greg, we gave you money from the Chinese, right?
Yeah, it was greatly appreciated.
We gave 𝗂𝗏 money. We gave VTA money. We gave Ron Johnson money. Hell, we even gave that crook Mark Block money, right? We gave money. And what did we have in return? We gave money for Cole Bishop. And then after all that happened, you're asking me to go back to the Chinese and get more money. For what? What am I going to tell them? What did we win? Absolutely nothing. So that's part of the problem as well, too.
And we gave reports back to the Chinese. We reported on every dollar that we spent, where everything went, and it didn't do anything.
Nothing.
Yeah, that's a problem where tangible results, the people who I work with on a day-to-day basis at larger tobacco companies that actually have lobbyists in every state, as well as the medium guys who, where they can, they engage legislatively. We can list off all the things that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But when
I
you
like the way you
also
said that.
have all of the bad things that are happening partially because you have forces out there that have, even with their generosity, that have 100 times
Yes.
more money
I agree.
than we do, you still are going to have bad things happen. And it can be difficult for people who don't understand the legislative process, and I don't blame them, they're in China, to understand the sheer level, the sheer number of threats that without engagement could have turned out and likely would have turned out much worse.
Yeah.
So that's one challenge from a fundraising perspective, is explaining.
It's hard. It's nearly impossible to even with, trust me when I tell you this, with the language barrier as well too, because it does not, it's very hard to sell that as a win just from the language barrier alone, you know?
Yes, I can. I'm sure my jarbled up legislative language talking about amendments to amendments and
zero fucks, they don't care.
And legislative staff and all that and legislative trickery. I'm sure that just translates perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna go ahead and bring this call in. Been waiting very, very patiently. 240, you're on the air here with Mr. Gregory Conley from the American Vaping Association.
Well, good evening, gentlemen. This is Greg. This is Scott Weber with the Vaping Awareness and Public Education Society out here just around the corner in the Capitol, just around the corner from the NIH and from our friends at the FDA. And I think you guys waited on me just to line up this perfect cue.
All right.
Good evening.
I'd like to basically know your strategy. So we got a whole new world. We've got a new administration in. We've got new Congress settings. We've got COVID. I want to know, Greg, if you might be able to share your views on strategy, especially from either from the AVA or from the vaping industry, on whether the best way is to now try to make inroads into the Biden administration, whether we should try to now make connections with new Congress, whether it should be at the state levels where the greatest threats are probably going on, as so many of the legislatures are now getting into session, with local governments, if they're in order of priority. And I'm just willing to see or interested in hearing what your views are on strategy for this new world.
Thank you, Scott.
Very good question. You can't leave any avenue undefended. This year, we really need for these states where many states, as we discussed before we went on the air, many states are not even allowing the general public in to speak at hearings. If they're allowing people to testify via Zoom, they may only be allowing 4 people per side or less, where people that have lobbyists are the ones that are going to get picked to speak. And in that environment, last year, the year before, I could drop in to Kansas, Kentucky, wherever, go around with people, talk to legislators, get appointments, sit down and explain things to them. This year, I can't do that. I wish I could. I can send emails, but it can be very difficult to get people to speak to somebody from outside the state, let alone outside their district. So we need the local people for the state to get engaged, to keep us informed of what's going on. But at the national level, we absolutely also need actual lobbyists in DC who are still going to be able to see some of these members. We need district meetings happening. That's why we need to re-engage some of the vapors. And I know when you give bad news to people, when you seem gloomy, that it doesn't inspire that hope and vigor that causes people to say, I'm going to help, I'm going to fight the fight. But we really do need, as part of this strategy, the district meetings, as well as to get back to the drawing board with op-eds and letters to the editor about what the impacts of a flavor ban, of excessive taxation, those sorts of issues we need to start hitting again.
Scott, anything else?
And I wish I had a greater, bigger, sorry to interrupt, Scott. I wish I had a greater, bigger, grand legislative strategy, but you're talking to somebody that runs an organization on $130,000 or less per year. So a lot of the big things that if you had 10 times that, you could have staff and you could have duties and you could have deliverables, but it's a little different when you're fighting against the world, unfortunately, or when you feel like it.
I hear you very much so. In fact, here in Maryland, they are putting a lot of the regulations, rather restrictions in. Only have 4 people for, 4 people against, and so that type of issue, where we've often brought in 75 to 100 people into a hearing, being restricted now to 4 is going to make it a whole different world. I wonder if you might also share your view on the Jenkins bill. They snuck in with the most recent COVID, which was the mailing restrictions via post office.
Well, first, with regard to that, I want to thank electric tobacconist Bruce, I think Gibson, over there. They actually hired a lobbyist, Amanda Wheeler, in Colorado and Arizona. I believe she either was working with VTA's lobbyist or she had her own lobbyist in DC on that issue. Safada as well. There were attempts, there were meetings, many meetings, where people flew into DC, talked to legislative staff about how just inserting e-cigarettes into an existing law that was written before the USPS even offered signature at delivery for those 21 plus for alcohol sales, that this didn't make sense. We needed amendments. We recognized that it would be good to have in the statute exactly what the requirements are for an online sale of a vaping product. But this was the PACT Act was designed to stop people from buying cigarettes and smokeless tobacco online. It wasn't to protect youth. Very few youth were buying a carton of cigarettes from a Native American reservation to save money. People were buying cartons of cigarettes from Native American reservations or from low tax states to evade taxes, period. And now we're in that bill and we have to deal with the consequences. Consequences like USPS being forbidden from mailing vaping products in the next likely 90 to 120 days, a little less than 120. And not just that, you have FedEx banning vape shipping. God knows what could happen with UPS or DHL. That's going to increase costs majorly when you add in the idea of delivery on top of that. And then you have the less spoken about part of the bill, where every 10th of the month, any state that you sell to that has an excise tax on vaping products, you need to report to them each and every individual sale, each product you sold to them, what price you sold the product to. And then depending on the state, you either need to collect the tax from that consumer and remit it to the state, or you don't collect the tax and then the state sends their goons after people saying you illegally
No taxes,
you didn't pay taxes. So it's a mess. And you add to that the fact that many of these states, they're not just going to accept a check from Joe Blow. They're going to tell Joe Blow, hey, you need to buy a wholesale license, you need to buy a retail license, or just plain you can't sell online to our state. So a lot of changes are coming. And I just talked today on the phone for about 15, 20 minutes to a CBD focused publication about how the broad language in the bill
it captures it. I mean, it's my understanding it captures it, Greg. I've seen some vape bros say, "Oh, I'm just saying that I'm shipping CBD." It's clearly. I think it captures it.
Well, here's the reality, as is often the case with this industry. The good people, the ones who endeavor to follow all the laws and want to keep their corporation clean and not deal with the headaches and set a good example, they're going to get hurt by this because they're going to follow the law. They're going to charge outrageous taxes. They're going to charge outrageous shipping, etc. Then you're going to have tens, dozens, hundreds of the fly-by-night outfits that you and I all know that are just going to keep going with what they do. Or they're going to just restrict the nicotine products, but say, we'll deal with the consequences for everything else later. And that's going to hurt the good guys because they're going to have less, they're going to be the cheapest option. And the Government Accountability Office has twice put out reports over the last 10 years talking about a lack of enforcement of the PACT Act. But when you're dealing with a new administration, when you're dealing with scary products that are target marketed to our kids, you can expect that there is going to be enforcement. It's just an open question as to whether anybody will actually want to be the state AG or the ATF agent that goes after CBD or a device without nicotine attached. That's just who knows what's going to happen in the future.
Scott, thanks a lot for your call. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Hope you're doing
Very
good.
much so. Thank you.
Have a great night. Greg, quickly, let's touch on appointments, right? I mean, my good friend 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗹, I will not miss him at all. He seems to be getting replaced by your buddy, Murphy, right?
Yes, 𝗍𝗵𝗶𝗹, the former Surgeon General under President Obama, who resigned at the beginning of the Trump presidency following a month or two of pushback from his report that he wrote back in 2016, 2015, where they intentionally focused only on youth so they could avoid any questions about population level health effects or whether they help adults quit. They just said they saw what Public Health England did, they saw what the Royal College of Physicians did, and said, let's do a report only focusing on youth so we don't have to deal with any tough questions. 𝗍𝗵𝗶𝗹, of course, has been an utter disappointment. Even when President Trump started to evolve, let's say, on the issue of vaping, he didn't.
Yeah.
He barely gave a defense to the president that he has been otherwise so dedicated to kissing up to over the last 4 years. So the change from Surgeon Generals don't make rules, but we did go 4 years in the Trump administration without a new vaping report that you know how that would turn out to be. I wouldn't be surprised if 𝗍𝗵𝗶𝗹 decides one of his first things after COVID is another report, because God knows we need more Surgeon General's reports. But I'm much more worried about what happens with FDA.
I mean, to me, just to close on this 𝗍𝗵𝗶𝗹 thing, I see it as a citizen as well, too. It wasn't just his failure on vaping and, you know, his outrageous tweets and stuff that he's deleted in the past and all that, but it's also this handling of COVID as well, too, and this stance that he did. And whether you agree, I mean, even to this day, I hear people saying COVID is a hoax or whatever. But to me, I just see it as my own personal opinion. I think that his entire career has been one failure and people have died because of it. I mean, this is a serious thing that we're talking about. People have died based on his guidance and his information or his ethical beliefs or whatever he believes in the moves that he's made. Because whether we believe it or not, okay, it's not like the days of Coop, right? But the Surgeon General does hold a position that a lot of people in America look at and say, well, he's the top doctor in America and we should follow what he says. And some of his advice, unfortunately, has caused people to get sick. And the same thing with 𝗍𝗵𝗶𝗹. I mean, the convolution between vaping products and 𝗍𝗵𝗶𝗹 not only hurt smokers, but it also hurt cannabis users that were not clear on the product that they were using that could actually put them in the hospital as well, too. So it was both sides got hurt, and both sides, you know, people possibly have died from it.
And 𝗍𝗵𝗶𝗹 is the ultimate kind of prototypical public health director, where whatever the priority of the boss is, that's my priority. Whatever the beliefs of the major groups that lobby us, that come to our cocktail parties, well, those are the beliefs that are largely acceptable.
Yeah.
And 𝗍𝗵𝗶𝗹's never expected much from him. I did not expect him to, for example, go to SRNT and take a selfie with Adam Leventhal and declare that he wanted to ban menthol cigarettes and all flavors and tobacco products. Didn't really expect that from him.
Yeah.
But he showed his true colors, that he was someone that either really wants to be elected governor of a state or to the House or to the Senate one day, or he just, whatever his bosses say, this is what I'm going to do to stay within good graces.
All right, let's touch some other positions. Obviously, you mentioned FDA commissioner.
Yeah, there have not been new articles that I've seen over the past couple of weeks with any leaks about who Joe Biden is thinking about for the FDA. Earlier, November, December, there was rumbling about two other names that are unimportant, but two names, David Kessler and Joshua Sharfstein. David Kessler would bring with him, he was the FDA director under Bill Clinton. He knew how to make a media sideshow. He once, Tropicana did something where maybe their juice was not actually 100% orange juice, whatever it was. He did a whole public show of dumping out the bottles of orange juice. He went after the tobacco industry. He learned, to his credit, he got his hands on documents and did a lot of extensive study on the way the tobacco companies were manipulating nicotine and all those things we've heard before. And he tried to regulate nicotine as a drug.
Yeah.
And, you know, for some of the old warriors, veterans of the anti-smoking movement, like a Dr. Michael Siegel, they've cared about smoking for so long. They see the data on vaping products and they believe in it. Well, Dr. Kessler is the opposite. He hasn't paid attention. And at an FDLI meeting, 3-4 months before the pandemic, David Kessler declared, and I know Angelica Levito did an article on this at the time, that Juul, and I believe his statement was generalized to all vaping products, they can't pass the population level health test because of youth use.
Yeah.
So you have somebody that is competing potentially for that job who is coming in believing that possibly no e-cigarette, that these things should be drugs. And then speaking of drugs, Joshua Sharfstein was an FDA deputy director in 2009 when the FDA decided to declare e-cigarettes to be drug delivery devices, and got shot down in court multiple times, which led us to where we are today. And Joshua Sharfstein, during the COVID pandemic, the early days, he wrote an article for either Stat or Vox complaining that the judges in the 𝗧𝗏 case had overruled the science, had disregarded the opinions of FDA. And pretty much Josh Sharfstein was saying the court should have let us declare vaping products to be drugs, and we'd be in a better place today. So if those two people, if either of them become FDA director, tobacco will be a major part of their portfolio. And if not, then you have the potential for another Stephen Hahn or another, whoever the guy was before Stephen Hahn that took over for Gottlieb. They're so anonymous that you forget their names.
Yeah, they change pretty quick.
Where, drug approvals, vaccines, food, all those things take priority over the weird little tobacco category that shouldn't even be at FDA.
Yeah.
But if it's Sharfstein or
Kessler, bad news.
Sharfstein or Kessler, all bets are off.
HHS?
HHS, you have 𝗂𝗵𝗶𝗹, the former California AG. He is pretty much a prohibitionist on vaping, but again, the hope would be that you end up with a situation where both HHS and the FDA director look to Mitch Zeller. And I never thought.
I would never thought we'd ever hear that.
Look to Mitch Zeller and they say, it's your job, your experience doing this. Your job is to follow the science. Follow the science.
Yeah.
And at this point, Mitch Zeller being the one that makes some of these decisions is probably better than any political appointee in the Biden administration, unfortunately.
The irony of that. Any other positions that could be directly tied into to the fight that we have?
Not much where you're going to have anything of significance. Neera Tanden got put up by Joe Biden to be OMB director. It was, of course, OMB that rescued us 6 years ago when the Obama administration, or rather when CTP wanted to immediately ban flavors in vaping products and only allow them back if PMTAs were authorized. It was OMB that said no, that's crazy. And Neera Tanden probably will not. Oh, well, now it's 50-50 in the Senate. Who knows? I expect her name to be dropped. But people for NIH, whoever gets put in there, they're going to keep the research dollars flowing to bad people. There's not going to be a major change. The new CDC director, I forget her name. She has an impressive resume in harm reduction. She's going to be definitely somebody that smart people try to meet with and try to explore what went wrong with EVALI, what the CDC is getting wrong on tobacco, but ultimately all of her staff is going to be the same prohibitionist staff like Brian King.
Yeah, that's been there
for years. So I'm not filled with any hope, but aside from FDA, I'm not filled with existential dread over any of the picks thus far.
There is one good thing, and it's a part of the question I was going to bring up earlier as well too, and that is that there's still a lawsuit, just one lawsuit out there, and that's from big time vapors in the USVA, which is going to this. We're hoping, right? Can you just briefly touch on that?
Yes, they have filed a petition for cert with the Supreme Court. There's somebody that's working on an amicus brief right now for various players in the industry to sign on to. And the Supreme Court, sometimes they take months to make a decision on whether to hear a case. So who knows when that will come down.
But it's still active.
Case, by the way, the case is challenging, saying that the FDA did not go through the proper process, or rather that the FDA was given unconstitutional powers to deem whatever product fit within the definition of tobacco products. They could deem that product to be a tobacco product with no guidelines on what the FDA was supposed to consider. So FDA said before in documents, we have unlimited discretion to declare any product that fits the definition of a tobacco product to be a tobacco product. And there's some Supreme Court language dating back 80 years ago that hasn't really come into play in a long time that suggests not having some set of standards that are identifiable violates the Constitution. We will see. Because you have the potential of a 6-3 Supreme Court, 5-4 that wants to explore unconstitutional delegations. But this has always been a long shot, and it's always been a case that the ultimate arbiter was going to be the Supreme Court if it got there.
If it ever got there. And I think this is the only one that we have going still, right? From all the lawsuits that have happened over the last 3-4 years.
I believe so.
I'm looking at some of these questions. I just want to keep it as a topic because we got to let Greg go. We've kept him for a very, very long time. Very, very educational. Is it true? This is from Amish. I'll pick this one up. Is it true Bloomberg's 𝗂𝗄𝗋, which is the pharmaceutical electronic cigarette has been working, is awaiting medical approval, not PMTA approval?
So it's definitely not going through the PMTA process.
Absolutely not, yeah.
I do not know if that application is actually pending before FDA or if it's just a product that maybe if they attract more investors, they'll go that route. Yeah. I forget the exact details of that article. We also do not know. I think some people have drawn the connection between 𝗂𝗋 and all of Michael Bloomberg's activities. Well, we don't know how much money Bloomberg actually put into that product. He may own or have the rights to 0.7% of 𝗂𝗋. Well, he's a billionaire. And he's a billionaire who has funded anti-smoking, anti-tobacco, anti-nicotine efforts for years.
Yeah. Literally millions of dollars.
Yes.
So, yeah, I agree with that. And there's absolutely no way to know unless they're going to make a public announcement of it. I think when it comes to medical, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, you're not going to get any information unless the company outright comes out and makes, like we've heard with the vaccines where they're applied and we know that it's pending.
Yeah, it's notable that there has not been any press around the product for 6+ months.
Yeah.
But that could just be them being quiet before getting big news. Who knows?
Just a side question that popped up. I had a phone call the other day with a consulting group in New York, and they were talking about IQOS. And why do you think IQOS has not gone balls to the walls marketing in America right now? I mean, you would think, like, we got the FDA pre-market authorization. It's done well in other countries. What are they waiting for? Are they waiting for MRTP? Are they waiting for vaping to completely disappear from this country? Why haven't they not gone balls to the walls with IQOS in America?
Well, one, this is a product that requires a lot of demonstration, and you can't demonstrate in a pandemic, or you can't demonstrate effectively.
Good point.
Two, I'm still not sure after all these years of talking to people from PMI, from Altria at conferences and getting them drunk and finding out what I could find out. Still don't know exactly if Altria actually believes this is a product that could take huge market share from cigarettes in America, because someone from one of the tobacco companies once said to me, Greg, never underestimate the contempt the American people feel for the cigarette.
Yeah.
IQOS, while it is obviously chemically different from a cigarette, it still looks like a cigarette. You're still carrying around a pack with tobacco
packed
into little sticks. So I don't know if Altria's internal worldview is that this is a product that's going to be a niche, or if it is a product that is going to be huge.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I kind of figured, what would be great would be for them to eliminate vaping products completely, and then you have zero competition, because there's a lot of people out there still today, not like it was back in 2012 or 2013, but there's people that are quitting with vaping products right now. I mean, maybe not the same numbers that we did before, but we still have, one by one. Here in the Smoker Show, we've converted 10, 20 people in the last year, So it would make sense for me for every competition because that's usually how these big corporations work, eliminate competition and then bust your own product into the market and then dominate.
Yeah, I haven't seen too much of those indications. It'll be interesting this year. There were bills floated last year in Missouri that were so clearly written by a tobacco company. They were clearly written by $500 an hour attorneys, not generic drafters with straight out of law school. And the bills would have set the state up as the enforcement authority to ban any product that did not have a PMTA pending or did not have a PMTA. And I have not seen whether those bills have been reintroduced this year, whether or not it's going to go expand beyond Missouri. That could be the long-term play, recognizing FDA can't do their jobs. So let's get some friendly states to start acting as mini FDAs and protecting us from competition, because we'll always behave legally,
correct,
unquote, whereas our competition will not. Just don't know. I don't think that they are at the point where they want to destroy the industry, but I'm sure every time there's a menthol cigarette ban that happens because it piggybacks on top of negative feelings about vaping. I'm sure there are some discussions in London at BAT and in Virginia at Altria about, God darn, we need to do something about this vaping.
Yeah. I understand. All right, Phil, questions? Any questions?
Yeah, let me ask a question to Greg. Greg, what's your take on artificial or man-made nicotine?
Sure. Why not? The problem is that tobacco-free kids have wised up to that approach. So flavor bans and such, they often will now ban not just tobacco-derived nicotine, but any nicotine. And some of them even just say any liquid intended to be vaped, that is banned. It's certainly for states that don't get persuaded or won't get persuaded for several years to pass terrible overarching legislation. It may, in some areas, some manufacturers, it may be their only outlet to legally stay in business. And what you'll end up with is either someone gets a bug about it, or one product will become big. And that's when you start having the questions. The FDA starts probing and starts declaring something to be a drug. And then you're going to have another 3, 4, 5 year process to determine who's right.
Yeah, I mean, if it becomes another jewel, yeah, absolutely. It's going to draw the attention. But as it stands for now, and don't forget that the cost is prohibited still. I mean, it's very, very expensive, folks. I'm telling you.
Yeah, we've heard that several times from Five Points. So would you say the opposition's eggs are all in the... It's all about underage vaping. It's all about saving the kids. Is that what...
It's always been the strategy.
Okay.
Always been the kids, especially when you no longer have 35-40% of American adults smoking, when smoking is much more of a background problem that these legislators don't see at their from the upper class people that they're around.
Yeah. What about the model where, okay, so if this is all about the kids, right? We take all vape products out of C-stores, and we make vape shops 21 and over.
So here's the thing. It's all about the kids in terms of what their public statements address. In reality, it's simply about a hatred of the products and the fact that they're one of their deliverables. Every nonprofit with their donors, they like to have deliverables. Well, a deliverable to Michael Bloomberg's people is, we got New York, we got Rhode Island, we got this to ban these products. And exemptions of any kind, they will fight tooth and nail. So it's not really about keeping the products out of the hands of youth. And you'll have some legislators that will start to embrace that idea. And then tobacco-free kids will go in and poison the well and talk about how, oh, well, you can't actually keep kids from getting them if they're available anywhere, this and that. So certainly some of these states, the adult-only store is better than a ban. But it's a question of how many states, once you have tobacco-free kids saying no, 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 how many states will actually move forward at all?
I find it ironic that we see constantly, especially lately, 𝗶's been doing a lot on Twitter talking about manipulation and big tobacco, and it's almost like they're giving no credit to the kids at this point. I mean, number one, they're not giving any credit to the kids, which is bad. And also, basically, they're saying that every parent in America is a horrible parent. It's like, I wish we had some, you know, again, we go back to the PR and the mainstream media and all that, but that would be just, that tagline is like, where are these kids' parents? You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you're worried about little Timmy, you know, where are you parenting him and telling him about other stuff, just with sex and drugs and everything else that a parent should be telling their kids? And I find it ironic that it's not being brought up enough. It's like parenting, you know, what happened to that?
Yeah, more and more people, it's a generic kind of political statement, but more and more people think the state needs to be involved in parenting
Yeah.
children. That parents can't, in an environment where you have mom and dads, both of them working 40, 50 hours a week, the state needs to step in and provide a safe haven for youth. But of course, the safe haven only extends to vaping and tobacco products. It doesn't extend to alcohol, and in an increasing number of states, it doesn't extend to marijuana.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, this is the way things are. How many times have I said, Dimitri, that there's no such thing as responsibility anymore?
No.
They don't want to hear that. Nobody wants to be responsible, but they love the word blame. We have to blame it on something. We have to blame what's going on something, and they're not taking responsibility because it is the parents' responsibility.
Oh, absolutely it is. But, you know, that's just the blanket that they use on top of that. Hey, Greg, any good news before we let you go? Anything good?
Good question.
Biden said he's going to lead with science. Isn't that good?
Yes. It's absolutely good news.
I'm trying to grasp onto something.
We've survived last week as a country. God willing, we will survive the next week. And there are always going to be victories. Last year, we took a lot on the chin, but you know what? A whole lot of state legislatures, not just because of COVID, had bad proposals that they did not move on.
Yeah.
And the same thing's going to be this year. We're going to be faced with hundreds of bills in the next 4 weeks, and some of them are going to get through, but many of them that would otherwise get through will not, because people are going to get engaged and fight just as they fought in prior years. Just they're going to have to adjust their techniques, because I'm not going to be encouraging people in most states to gather in public until this is better taken care of. But of course, business owners and such, it's hard to tell them, don't go to your state house, don't try to go see people face to face when your livelihood is
especially threatened. When their livelihood's on the line. I mean, the best thing for people to do is just to, you know, reach within their community, reach within their state group, reach to people that know what they're doing before they, you know, and then make a concerted effort as a unit in your state to try to defeat this with whatever outlet that the legislature has given you. But one thing is for sure, with COVID being the way that it is currently, this is going to be the hardest legislative session we have, because this is a great opportunity for legislators to pass bad legislation without great opposition. So you have to be twice as much on your toes than you've been in previous sessions.
Yeah, and every year I am worried and thinking and often knowing that it's going to be worse than the prior year, but this is new uncharted territory. We saw what happened in New York last year. New York, they threw the flavor ban into the budget bill because Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids went out and said, well, we need this as a anti-COVID measure. And that was even before Bonnie Halpern-Felcher's paper had come out. So there's going to be a lot of this year, and it's going to be another year.
Another year.
We'll survive.
American Vaping Association, vaping.org is the website. You can get on there, get some more information about it. And also follow American Vaping Association on Twitter at @AVA-board. Come on, guys, 13,000 followers. I mean, Rip Trippers has like 100,000 followers. Come on, what are you doing? You got to be able to follow these guys, and they're working very, very hard. Huh?
I need to change that header image on the Twitter account.
I like it. I mean, Trump's hair that day, I don't know if you noticed, his hair was like on point. I don't know if he did it specifically because he was meeting with you guys, but his hair was absolutely on point. It reminds me of Phil's wig that he has.
And by the way, another funny moment from that White House meeting, as Trump was leaving, thankfully he was walking past me, so I got to shake his hand, and I brought a hat for him to sign that I was thinking about auctioning off at some point. And then Robin Koval from the Truth Initiative, who was sitting to my left, she proceeds to give Trump a book.
Oh,
and in
boy.
my head, I'm just thinking, of all the things in the world that you would choose to give to President Donald Trump, you give him a book.
Which I'm sure he's not going to read ever.
He appreciated that I brought a hat much more than that.
Should have given him a vape. All right, Greg, listen. We appreciate you coming on. It's been a long time coming, but I think we got a lot of good information out there. We certainly appreciate you taking the time away from your lovely girlfriend and your work to be here with us tonight. And look forward to fighting with you in 2021.
Thank you. And thank you, Phil. It's Greg THR on Twitter. And next week, probably somewhere between Tuesday and Thursday, there'll be an edition of Regulator Watch with me giving a more concise summary of all the things we talked about for the last 90 minutes.
Fantastic. We'll get to see you with Brent. Go ahead, Phil.
From me, Greg, just a very, very sincere thank you for your efforts with trying to keep this industry alive. So I certainly appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you. It's been a fun 10.5 years, and hard to believe it has been.
And you're still vaping flavored product in New Jersey.
I am.
There you go. There you go. All right, there you guys, everybody. Gregory Conley from the American Vaping Association. Thanks for joining us tonight, Greg.
See you guys.
I'm going to switch to this here really quickly. You know, I'm going to look through some of these messages while I'm recropping this shot with Phil here. What is the word on the list of PMTAs from the FDA? We talked a little bit about that with Greg on. There is none. They have absolutely done nothing so far to put out a list or really anything else. We haven't seen really anything from the FDA come out. No list, no nothing. We haven't seen any responses to PMTAs. There we go, Phil. I got you on the shot now.
Nada. Absolutely nothing.
Just a couple of these questions. The movie You Don't Know Nicotine will make an impact this year. Again, we talked about that at the when we discussed the movie. Unless we see it on some mainstream form, I just can't see. I mean, unless we see it on a Netflix, on a Hulu or something like that, I just don't see if it's going to impact or do anything to be able to change the course of where we're heading, Phil.
Yeah, no, it's not getting out there enough, right? Not enough people are going to see it. The right people aren't going to see it. Even if they do, I mean, look, how much science do they just brush aside, right?
Yeah.
How much do they ignore?
A lot.
You think they're gonna buy into this movie? You think the movie's gonna change their direction, their opinion? They're gonna have this aha moment and all of a sudden be vape supporters?
Yeah.
They hate us. It's just so frustrating.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. And I know this sounds like a downer episode, but let me tell you something. I said this to me and Phil daily get messages. I wish you knew how many messages we get daily from concerned vapors that have quit smoking through our journey, right? People have been following us for years, or we've helped, through our videos back in the day. We get messages every day from people that are really concerned that they're not going to be able to vape.
Yeah.
You know how sad that is? You know how alarming that is for this country? I just want to say one thing. I guarantee you, as long as you know me and Phil, and as long as we have a platform, you'll always be able to vape. Well, I mean, we'll find ways to help you continue to vape. That I can assure you of. But how frustrating must be to be a citizen in this country, Phil?
Right.
And to be worried if you're going to be able to live a healthier life or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, what do we always say? We always say, try the standard cessation products. If the standard cessation products don't work, right, try vaping. It works for a lot of people. So if you take vaping away, the standard cessation products are not going to work. People are going to go back to smoking. We see it. We hear about it all the time. Not only is it disheartening for people who vape and they're afraid that their liquid or their vape is going to get taken away, because it has for thousands of people, right?
Yeah. With
the flavor bans. But those people that are thinking about trying it, it's like a double whammy for those people, because number one, do I really want to try it with everything that I'm reading and everything that I'm hearing and everything that I'm seeing? That's number one. Number two, with all of these bans and like what I hear at my local vape shop, it's like, why even invest in it if it could potentially go away? right? So
it makes sense. I mean, it's so hard for somebody to have a vape shop today and say, "Oh, by the way, there's legislation that probably will ban flavors, next week. That's in the House right now. But here, go ahead and spend $100 and buy this this kit."
Exactly.
I don't know if this was kind of a sarcastic comment. Cemetery Gates asks, when a coach doesn't win games, they need to get fired. Do we need new blood? New blood where? VTA is gone. I mean, I haven't heard anything of what they're going to do in this new year, given all the millions that they got last year from the Chinese, which, by the way, if you go back and listen to a DP show, I predicted. Phil, you can add that to my "I told you so" list.
Yeah, you got a lot of them.
𝗧𝗏 has been restructured their board, 15 times in the last 12 months. I just saw today they added Taylor Cage and Sean Casey from Flavor Art to their board. But who are we going to fire? I mean, are you going to fire Greg? I mean, he's really the only one left out there on a national level that continues on the same path. There's really not much other representation on a federal level. And
what's crazy is that VTA not very long ago was the new blood.
Yes. Right? And apparently we fired them as well too. I mean, and look, and like I said, VTA did some really good things and had some really good intentions. But as always, when you get into this, this field, it doesn't always work out, and you make some decisions that are not going to be good. And trust me when I tell you this, when the book comes out with Phil, you're going to see that a lot of stuff that I told VTA not to do, or that I disagree with, you'll see that it was the mistake. And that's one of the reasons why I backed off about a year and a half ago from the federal level. It was because I saw these mistakes being made. And when they went to the Chinese and tried to approach it, I told John from Demand Vapes, and I told Tony, I was like, you have to handle it like this, or it's going to be a huge mistake. I mean, once these companies give $500,000, because the s'more question came up earlier, once these companies give $500,000 and you don't deliver, how are you going to go back and ask for another $500,000? It's just not gonna work. Yeah. And it's unfortunate, but that's the truth. So, Mr. Gates, there's nobody left to fire. Who are you going to fire?
We should. First of all, I think that might be a good name for the book. I told you so.
That's a good name for the book. Or
right?
Another good name for the book. Who is left to fire? That's another good name for the book. Here's
how about we're fucked? And
yeah, that's a good.
The U is. Maybe we should have somebody from 𝗧𝗏 on.
Yeah, maybe we'll try that. We'll try
their strategy.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't talked to those folks in a long time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a reason for it. But boob sweat leads to pearl necklaces says. This is a true name, so it's a very nice message, but that's the name. I just want to thank Phil Busardo for everything that you're doing for vaping. I just want to thank all three of you for everything you're doing for vaping. I'm assuming he's meaning Greg as well, too. I'm still a smoker that's trying to switch. I just need to find the right flavor, nicotine, and strength. Yep, that's the most important part, man. It's finding the right flavor and finding the right nicotine.
If he's still here, what is he?
He apparently boob sweat is what he's been vaping, and it hasn't worked out. Boob sweat leads to pearl necklaces. That's the name.
That's the name of the liquid, or that's his name?
No, that's his name.
Oh, okay. Because you know what? I wouldn't put it past the liquid company to calling that, that name.
I have the solution. If
you're still here, you're still listening, just let us know what you're vaping, and let us know your hardware and your liquid, and let's see, maybe we could send you something out.
So I did a lot of thinking this past week, and I come up with a solution, Phil. Out in Arizona, there's these missile complexes. I don't know if you've seen them. They actually have 2 of these on the market currently for sale. There are about 46 sites, if history serves me right. I actually researched this quite a few years ago because I was, I'm very interested in stuff like this. But I think there were like 46 of these complexes that had the missiles, and they were like, during the Cold War and the Russians and all that stuff, right? And they were all closed down at some point, and some of them were completely destroyed, but there's a few left, and they've literally got them up for sale. Now, granted, they need a slight remodel, but $475,000, Phil, that's not a lot.
Now, wait a second. Is that just for the space, or is that like renovated?
No. That's just to buy the complex, right? The bunker, right? And the property that it sits on. And obviously, you're gonna have to go in and and it's probably flooded. You know, I mean, there's water, you know, and stuff like that. There's, you know, you have to get oxygen and air down there. But I was thinking, you know, we buy one of these, we go halfsies, or we start a GoFundMe. We do that. We start a GoFundMe, or a Kickstarter. We start a Kickstarter. We raise the funds to buy it, and we raise some funds to remodel it, and then we build the first world's underground vape bunker. In one of the complex, let's say where the rocket was, we can build a manufacturing facility. We can make liquid inside there. We can make hardware, and then in the other facility, obviously, you know, we can have like vape parties, you know, like expos. I think it's a good idea.
Did you get Inikin's buy-in on this? I would imagine that they could fund a lot of it too. You know, I see, because I'm looking at that image there, and I can see a little section there where we can put some manufacturing.
Oh yeah, it's plenty. It's huge. I mean, this thing is
like right, you know, right up there.
It's a silo, for crying out loud. They had a missile inside there. Of course we can.
We could definitely fit one of those conveyor lines.
Plenty of room. And absolutely. Down here on the basement, we can make like a little media room. Put a nice big screen up so we can watch porn at night. I mean, I think it's a really good idea.
That is important.
Let me see what it does. Says it has slightly a little bit of flooding, but that's okay. We just put some pumps out there, and then we take. You know, this is the best part about this. We're gonna have the oxygen pipe that pumps oxygen into the silo, and then we're gonna have another pipe, and we're gonna call that the vape pipe. So when we're vaping, it's gonna suck out all the vapor and then whoosh, blow it out, and it's gonna look like a choo-choo train outside the silo. It's gonna be so cool.
That flooding. We could filter that and use that.
Yes, we
could absolutely filter that and use it. No problem.
We can distill it and then use it into our e-liquid. And then that would be a marketing point. Get liquid that was made with distilled water from the Titan II missile complex. That shit would sell a lot.
I got it. Ready?
Hit me.
Bunkwid.
Bunkwid. I love it. That's great. Can you register that?
I'm registering it right now.
Bunkwid.com. Please grab it. Grab it right now. But anyway, yeah, all in good fun. But you know, I mean, it's kind of funny that, I mean, we're laughing about it. But don't forget that 5-6 years ago, I had the idea of making a church of vape as well too. People laughed then, and then people were like, "Hey, Dimitri, remember that idea you had with a church vape?" Like, I would be the pastor. I would be the pastor, and in my church, you would pay a monthly fee to be part of the church, kind of like Scientology or whatever. And part of that is, for me, my church would give you blessed e-liquid. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
So just like you get like a sample box you would get the Greek pastor box every month, and it would have liquid inside, but that liquid would be special because it would be in the church and it would be blessed by the pastor, which would be me, and we would be nonprofit too, so we wouldn't pay taxes. It's fucking brilliant.
What's we got a there's boobs where it leads to pearl necklaces. I have numerous devices, but the Caliburn G is my go-to. Okay, I've tried various strawberry juices and apple cinnamon. And those are my favorites.
All right.
So
thank you for the super chat, by the way, Boobless. But yeah, get a hold of Phil. All right, get a hold of Phil on Facebook. Send him a message. And let him make some suggestions to you, and let him send you a few products to try out. And maybe I don't want to say don't do tobacco, but I mean, Phil will give you more details, right, Phil?
Yeah. I am going to suggest, some tobaccos. I'll send them a device. We'll hook them up. And I'm assuming anybody with the name "boob sweat leads to pearl necklaces" has got to be in the United States.
It has to be. It has to be. Oh, don't get me started. My what I had to send out last week was from the platform group was UK. Pico Elector says, "Can your yellow vape submarine reach the missile complex bunker?" Remember when we had the idea about the yellow vape submarine?
I was going to talk about the submarine.
Yeah. We'd have to dig a lot to reach Arizona with a submarine. I'm not going to lie to you. That's a big deal.
Well, if the silo is a nuke launcher, and if the submarine has a nuke launcher, maybe we could just use that to fly.
Just nuke half the United States again.
We got it all covered. There's no problem.
Don't worry, man. Don't worry. I'm just saying we have to have options. That's all I'm saying. Will a 510 connection fit on the missile orbit?
Something scary that's going on right here, right now? is that the stores are again out of paper towels and
Yes.
toilet paper. And,
I was at Costco the other day, and they were out of paper towels.
and it's not because of COVID.
No, it's because people think they're going to storm the Capitol, and it's going to be the end of the world. It's going to be like an Independence Day movie.
Yes.
I don't believe anything's going to happen. I really don't. That's just my opinion.
I think there's going to be some, here and there, but not. Well, hopefully not to the extent.
Look, I don't get it. I don't get it, Phil.
Nothing. You can't do anything.
There's nothing to accomplish by creating unrest.
Right.
There's nothing. And trust me, these people are not fucking around. They will shoot you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, you want to be a martyr and go down like that over something that, again, I'm not trying to make this political. Either side doing this would be, to me, crazy. But to the level where they're talking like this is going to happen, I don't think anything is going to happen. I don't. And what does that have to do with paper towel and shitting yourself? What does that have to do with that?
Like it's going to stop supply chains. I don't know.
I mean, if you're attacking the Capitol, they don't make toilet paper in the Capitol, is what I'm saying.
You know what?
There's a bunch of shit bags in there, but they don't make.
I believe in that silo. There is room for toilet paper and paper towel production, right? And perhaps even antibacterial wipes, because those still very, very hard to come by.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
So we're going to be bunkwood and Sandy wipe.
Silo juice. Somebody said
silo juice. I like
it's not
that.
Horrible.
Silo juice. Silo juice. That's good. Maybe that would be a good contest. So we're going to draw up a couple really nice Inikin prizes for you, since Inikin is the sponsor of the show. And leave us in the comments of this replay of the video. Leave us a comment of what would you call the liquid that we would make in the bunker silo.
I like that idea.
Put the names, and then me and Phil are going to pick two of the best ones, and we're going to send you a very nice Inikin package. We throw some tanks, we'll throw some devices, we're throwing new 𝗏𝗄𝗃 in there. Yeah, that would be fun for the next Smoker Show. Speaking of giveaways, we did have a contest, not a contest, but a little giveaway from the last Smoker Show that we did. We had asked you to leave some comments underneath here, and trying to stay positive about 2021. No going back, only moving forward. Great show from Chugmeister. Love the show. You guys changed the lives of so many. Love the show. We appreciate that. And what I did in that episode, Phil, I said I was going to give, because it was the end of the year, right? Yes. Recap. I was going to give away these very limited vintage Coolfire Z kits. I have an orange one, and I have a green one.
Grogu green.
Yes.
Yes.
That's whatever that means. Some Star Trek bullshit that I don't get. So one Coolfire green, mint green, and one orange. You can't get these in the United States. You really can't get them anywhere except France. Very, very limited. So I've got all the comments pulled up in a live comment picker here for you, and we're going to draw the winners right now. You excited?
There's a live comments picker?
Yes. Oh. Not live comments, but it takes the comments from
all the comments in
there, right?
Very nice. Yeah.
Unique comments 39, and then we're gonna hit.
This is very exciting.
Very, very exciting. Here
we're gonna find out who the big wiener is.
So the first winner is
Rex
Vapes. Rex Vapes. Great show. Can't wait to see what 2021 brings to the vapor market. Rex Vapes, get a hold of me on facebook.com/vapinggreek and send me your name and your address, and I will ship it out to you. You don't get to choose color, whatever shows up. I'm just going to put them randomly into packages and send them out there. All right, pick another winner. The second winner is going to be Rob Rand, our friend. Rob Rand. He's a good guy. Rob Rand, congratulations, my friend. Great show, guys. As always, informative and pretty thorough. Rob Rand, you know the drill. Send me a Facebook message, facebook.com/vapinggreek, and I will get it out to you tomorrow or the day after. I don't know. I got a lot of stuff to do tomorrow, but I'm getting my hair cut. I got to go to the gym.
Hey, kid, let me tell you something, kid. Dimitri's always on. Dimitri, he can talk and talk and talk. It becomes difficult to do a show like this one for me, right? when somebody like Greg is on, and you got that whole Dimitri and Greg
dynamic. Yeah, it's tough.
It's a good combination, right? And I'm out of my game. I'm out of my element at that point, and that's okay.
But that's okay, because it's just some of the stuff is just more geared towards me, and some of the stuff is geared towards more you. I will tell you one thing that I credit Greg for a lot of the knowledge that I have gained about politics over the last 8-9 years. The first time, I will show you, believe it or not, how long we've been doing this, right? Let me show you a picture. The first time that we, here in Tennessee, before we even formed the Tennessee Smoke-Free Association, there was a bill that popped up. And we flew Greg down, and we both went into the legislature here to fight this bill. And I think that picture, if I'm not mistaken, I think I have a picture somewhere. Maybe I don't. I think it was in 2012. 2012 or 2013. We that's the first time that I walked into a legislative house with Greg, and talking to people like him. What you try to do is you try to absorb information. That way you don't have to rely on calling him all the time. People like him, Brian Fodick, Pamela Gorman. I can go on and on. People that I surrounded myself with to be able to learn to deal in the lobbying level and in the legislature. So I have to give him a lot of credit. He's been a great inspiration for me, and he's been a great help as well too. I mean, he's reviewed some of my op-eds. He's done a lot of stuff, and every time that we call him for something, he's been there. So. He's definitely a huge asset to this industry. I just wish that we could fund him and have him on TV every day. It's just that we can't raise the money to do that. We just can't get we just can't get mainstream PR.
Yeah, he has been a good face of vaping. He has represented us well. He's spoken well. And I tell you what, if it's not him in the spotlight, I would vote you. I mean, you have a way of convincing and talking and pulling stats and data off the top of your head. I mean, you're really, really good at it.
Yeah, thank you, buddy. I appreciate that.
You would be excellent at it.
That's very humbling. I wish. I love doing it. I love trying to persuade and change minds, whether it's on a one-on-one meeting or whether it's in a group setting. But again, I wish we could get 10 people on, 20 people on. I wish we could get, 77-year-old Jeannie that vapes here in Chattanooga on TV. I wish we could get, hundreds of thousands of people that have discovered vaping and have quit smoking and have improved their health and bettered their life. But unfortunately, we just don't have it. And it doesn't seem like we're going to have it this year. I mean, money is very, very scarce this year. It's just that's just the reality of it,
But you know what, though? I want to show you something that makes me mad. Okay.
Yeah.
This was something I was going to show on the last Smoker show, but we ran late.
Sure.
And this is why we can't have nice things, because this came into me just a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Just a couple of weeks ago. Look at this. Now I know because it's coming through my machine, the resolution isn't very good, but here's this R&M switch, right? I mean, this is still happening. Look at how childish this is. Not only childish, but that's Homer Simpson right there.
Yeah.
Right. And that's Captain America right there, our little kid version of it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's why we can't have nice things. That's why no matter what we do, and I remember you telling me this, right? No matter what we do, as soon as they hold that up, we don't have an argument.
We're done.
We can't win. We're done. And you know what? Somebody's buying that shit. Somebody's buying it. Somebody's selling it. And it doesn't do the industry any good. It doesn't. And, and I think we're like, that's one thing I believe that we can all come together on, is that the childish labeling and the childish advertising, we've seen it.
It needs to go
away. Right.
It needs to go.
But there it is. It's still happening. It's still happening. It's so damn frustrating.
We got a little don't know train going on. Boob Sweat said, thanks for the $5. I just sent Phil a message on Facebook under the name Edward Cummings. Thank you for your guys' suggestion. Costello with the $5. I had breakfast with Gregory and Father Jack in the basement of the California State Capitol building. Seems like 20 years ago. Thank you so much for the donations. We appreciate it. And yeah, it feels like we've been in this for 20 years. It really has, especially when you're dealing on a political level. It's so draining. You know, being the executive director of a state association for the last 6 years, going on 7 years, it's draining. And it's, by the way, it's a volunteer position. You don't get paid for it. But aside from that, it's draining having that fight during session every year. And then in the off season where you're trying to build up for the next season and trying to raise money, trying to bring awareness, trying to get op-eds, it feels like 100 years. Not 20. It feels like 100 years. Costello, Ed, I should say, but yeah, it's definitely, Greg's definitely been a champion and a warrior for this industry. We don't always agree with him. I don't always agree with him, but then that goes for everybody in this industry. I don't always agree with him. But one thing is for sure, he is respectful of somebody else's opinion, whether you agree or not. The goal is to win, right? So the great thing about people like that, or people like me, is like we might not see eye to eye on everything, but we know that we have one goal, and the goal is to defeat a bad bill, right? We have a goal to promote tobacco harm reduction. We have a goal to help people quit smoking, right? And that ultimately is 70-80% of our makeup. And if we can agree on that 80%, the rest of it is irrelevant. We shouldn't let that, like who you voted for, shouldn't change the way. If I voted for Biden and Phil voted for Trump, I'm just using it as an example, that's not going to change my relationship with Phil. But I see it every day on social media. People are like mad at each other because of who you. I mean, you're literally fighting over two people that don't know who the fuck you are. Number one, they'll give a shit about you or your health. But more so than that is like, guys, come on, stop ruining your friendships and your family over stupid shit. The ultimate goal is tobacco harm reduction, and this is the message that we have to continue to spread. And don't buy RM, whatever the fuck that shitty ass fucking labeling was.
Oh boy! Hey, I'm vaping the 𝗬𝗓𝗔𝗏. I put a fresh build in there, and because there's something about that tank and my green peach tea that I really enjoy.
Yeah, you know what? Grim did a live build the other day on the Aries, and again, I don't know what Grim has against our products, but listen, he said he's not getting any flavor out of it, which I mean I don't know, but he put a used coil, a spaced used coil in the Aries, and put a fresh Clapton in another atomizer, and then he said that the other atomizer had a better flavor.
Oh,
it's like me putting used tires on my car and says it doesnn't run very good.
I got a question. Did he review the intake? Because you know I don't watch.
Oh, he loved it. Loved it.
Loved it.
Loved the flavor.
Okay.
So anyway, I did the same thing because we've been testing a new tank with Phil for the last 2-3 weeks. So I put my Aries to the side while we're doing all this work and testing prototypes and stuff like that. But man, I went back and I built it the other day, and it's just delicious. Oh, I don't know if we can say this, can we? It's 11:03. I guess we can. Well, I mean, we can't really say much, but some really interesting technology coming. So stay tuned for that. There's something that hasn't been done before, so we're very excited. Through Innikin, we'll keep you posted on that as soon as we're allowed to tell you details about it.
Such a tease. You're such a tease.
Question from Pico Lecter.
Yes.
What would be the best-selling watermelon peach e-liquid to fill the missile silo bunker?
Let me tell you. Okay, we're gonna swim in it. There's actually
we're gonna do what?
We're gonna swim in it. There's gonna be a little section of that bunker. It's gonna be like a hot tub. We can't build a whole swimming pool. Just a hot tub. You've seen me and Dimitri in a hot tub together before.
Absolutely.
And that hot tub-ish thing in the bunker is going to be filled with the #1 best-selling flavor in the unsalted line, the delicious watermelon peach.
You know, we were just talking to the manufacturer of the unsalted line Dash Vapes the other day, and it's still doing very well. So I'm thinking that we should expand, drop 3 more flavors on it.
I think we should. You know what I think we should do with the watermelon peach? I think we should ice it.
Well, mine is already iced.
Right, but that's it. Like if it's bad enough that I have the #1 best-selling flavor in the unsalted line. I'm figuring if we ice,
I'm a close second though. I'm a close second.
Now I'm gonna crush it. I'm gonna crush it because it'll be I will hold this one up and I will say it's the #1 best-selling flavor in the unsalted line. And then I will hold that up and I will say, and this is the #2 best-selling flavor in the
ice
unsalted
flavor.
line. And it'll give me more to talk about.
I don't
We
know.
should.
I'm thinking about launching. If I'm going to do a second flavor in the unsalted line, I want to do the pp tears.
Is PP Tears?
Yes, because it's really,
You know
really good.
what?
It's really good.
But the thing is, it's been done so many times. I would love to do Jennifer's pina colada because I've been vaping the shit out of
Yeah.
that and really, really enjoying it.
Yeah. I don't
Really
know if
enjoying
pina
it.
colada is it still
I know,
popular?
that's the
We got to
thing.
look at the data. You know, it's just not like stuff
No.
that we like to vape. If people vape my PP tears with 3% WS23 inside, they'd have a heart attack. But that's the way that I like it. I can't sell it like that.
Well,
So
and
we
you
have
know
to
what?
look at the
I
data.
think that's key. I think that's key. Like so you call that one PP Tears, we call this one Poo Poo Tears or something like that. You know,
Yes.
just something like just an off the, but it's still pina colada, but we call it something cool. We got to come up with a cool name. We
Yes,
call it,
yes.
on fleek. We call it something like that. Yeah. On fleek liquid.
And then when they say, "What is that?" and you're gonna say, "Oh, it's a pina colada." Like that. Just get their attention.
No, you know what? Who the fuck knows what a pina colada is? Like in the younger generation, I'm going to be. It's a delicious blend of coconut, creamy coconut,
That's true.
and pineapple, and this one has a little bit of mango in it. It's delicious. Then you could be like, "Oh my god, that sounds really good." It's all about
We can
it's
call
all
it
about the mix,
piñata
right?
colada. Colada means
colada.
colada. Colada means big ass in Greek, but it sounds good.
We can call it Jennifer juice, but I don't know how good that.
DP Tears. That's a good name. DP Tears. DP, get it? Tears.
Oh, DP Tears.
That's good.
Mm.
It's from Bill Tarling, of course, the brilliant
yeah.
mind. All right, we covered it all. Listen, for those of you that are watching now or watching on a replay, leave us a comment underneath here. What would you call the e-liquid that we would manufacture in the silo bunker in Arizona? I can't wait to see some of the responses. That is going to be just try to make it as funny as possible, and we'll pick 2 of the funniest one and send you a nice little gift pack, courtesy of our sponsor, of course, Inikin Technology. And I think that we said it all, Phil.
I think we did. It was a good show. You know, Greg is really informative. Once again, you guys, this is the Smoker Show, and I think that we are definitely. It's not. I think it's we are definitely talking to the same people every other week with the Smoker Show. We need to reach smokers. We need more interaction with smokers. We need to hear from people who are trying vaping or who are thinking about trying vaping, and we're going to take care of you, right? We're going to take care of you. So please send people to the show, have people join in with the show and interact with us, and we'll take care of you. But then, and also, if you have ideas for the show, you could leave that in the comments as well, too. Okay.
I appreciate everybody, people like Janine and Pam from Canada. I see them constantly posting on social media saying, if you're a smoker, come on. We really appreciate people like that.
Hamish.
Yes. Is it Hamish or Amish?
Hamish. I don't know.
Is it Amish? Is the H silent? Does anybody know?
So spell it out the way it's pronounced. Melissa Simmons, always here.
Yes.
Always doing little hearts and loves thing and everything.
Yeah. I think she has the things for you. I really do.
You think so?
Yeah.
Does she have a Facebook?
Yeah, I don't know. I think she has the hots for you, though.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do. I really do. But anyway, yeah, we really, really appreciate you guys. Thank you very much for hanging out. For me, just a word of, listen, I know it sounded very, very grim, but this is the way that you have to hear it. I think for years, we always try to kind of, make things up a little bit to make it not seem as brutal, because people get deflated. And we see that a lot of people have given up, and we don't want to give up. We want to continue to fight no matter what the result is. At least you go down swinging, right? So even though a lot of what you heard today is grim, it's the reality. It is your U.S. government, whether it be a public health arm, whether it be a government arm, a legislation arm, or a greedy arm, right? Or a nonprofit arm. They're coming after your right, to live a healthier life. So you have to know what the reality is, and then that way you can be more aggressive in the way that we're going to fight back. So even though everything sounded pretty bad today, that doesn't mean we're going to stop, and Gregory's not going to stop. And if me and Phil and Gregory are not going to stop, then you shouldn't stop either. So we hope you enjoyed the show. Please,
hold on.
Yes.
We have just a couple updates.
Yes. Okay.
It's Hamish.
It's what?
Hamish. It's Hamish.
No, it says Hamish.
No.
It's got a Y.
No, it's right there. He says what it is.
He put
says it's
ham.
ham.
Oh, he put ham. Okay, so it's Hamish.
It's Hamish. It's Hamish, and
It could be Hamish.
no. And he has the hots for me.
Hamish has the hots for you?
He says it right there.
Of course, it wouldn't be Melissa. It's definitely. Why would you think otherwise? It's just the story of your life, man.
It really is.
It's just like, I remember, just a little side note. I was
So many groupies through our career.
through our years of traveling and going to these shows and all that. I always used to say that to Phil. He's like, people used to come up to Phil all the time and say, hey, you crying or hugging and it's just it's like, you help me quit smoking. And I was like, Phil, you're gonna get all these groupies, and it was always men. Always men, like always men. But anyway, that men need to quit smoking as well too, Phil. So don't feel bad.
Absolutely.
And listen, 𝗵𝗵 has the hots for you. I think it's official now.
Hey, I'll take what I can get.
Damn right you can. All right, folks, we're gonna be next Tuesday night DP show. All right, we're gonna do a DP show. We haven't done one in a while, so that way we can be a little bit more uncensored and have a little bit of fun, because we're still in lockdown, and that's what the DP show is. It's here to provide you COVID relief. So we'll see you again next Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern.